Browns fans, welcome in to another episode of the Dawg Check podcast, live with you post game from Huntington Bank Field, where the Cleveland Browns obviously fall to the Bengals today, 21-14. It's their fifth straight loss. They're now 1-6 on the season. I think we all know what that means in terms of the 2024 campaign and these playoff hopes and dreams and everything that they thought they were going to accomplish at the beginning of the year. Everything we thought they could accomplish at the beginning of the year, when expectations were high and you were looking at a roster that was super, super talented and seemed like they had a real opportunity to make some noise after what was obviously a memorable season a year ago. But that's all gone out the window. And honestly, today's story, as much as five straight losses and the record and all these different things are notable, the big story from today, of course, is what happened on the field with quarterback Deshaun Watson. He leaves the game on the cart late second quarter, just before the half. I want to say it was like under 2 minutes to go, maybe right before, maybe just a little over 2 minutes to go in the half. And he basically was running a quarterback draw play, planted his right leg, and you saw the same thing we saw with Aaron Rodgers a year ago in his Jets debut, where you just kind of get that ripple effect of the calf muscle in his leg, which generally is clear as day, a sign that it is an Achilles injury and that Deshaun Watson is more than likely done for the season. Kevin Stefanski echoed those comments after the game and said it's likely season ending. Obviously, the team will undergo an MRI and further tests on the leg tomorrow, and we'll get official word on what that is. But I think given the tone after the game and given what Kevin Stefanski said, given what we saw on TV and via the replay, it is safe to assume that quarterback Deshaun Watson's season is done, and that this team is going to continue to be led by one of either Dorian Thompson-Robinson or Jameis Winston for the remainder of the 2024 campaign. There's a lot of sort of tentacles or branches that extend off of what played out today with Deshaun Watson. I think I should start probably with the fact that after the game, players in the locker room were pretty upset about the way that Watson's injury was reacted to by the fans, is maybe a good way to put it. And if you didn't catch it on TV, there were some pockets of fans sort of throughout the stadium who seemed to sort of cheer when Deshaun spent a lengthy amount of time down in the field, had his head in his hands, hunched over on his knees and his hands, and clearly was despondent about what had just happened to him, with the understanding that even he too kind of realized, I would assume, that his season was over. And then he gets put on the cart and carted out of here, and he kind of got the courtesy, when somebody signals they're okay, clap from the crowd. But what was said and sort of done before that did not go missed or was not lost on the players who were on the sideline, sort of witnessing it in real time. And those frustrations came out post game. I mean, not to be vulgar here, but one of the more emphatic responses came from Greg Newsome, who flat out said that he thought it was bullshit that the fans did that. This is a podcast, so I feel free to say that, obviously. Myles Garrett basically opened. Usually Myles walks in and it's like you start asking questions. Myles just took it kind of upon himself to open up his press conference with a statement about how fans need to be better. Everyone needs to be better in terms of how in terms of that reaction, and treating Deshaun that way when he was going through the injury situation that we all saw down in the field. And then you also had a number of other players. Joe Batoni, who said it's kind of an unwritten rule that you don't do that. And of course, Jameis Winston, who could be leading this team the rest of the way, as I alluded to, gave one of his classic sort of sermons on what he sort of saw play out and how disappointed he was in the fan base, understanding that this Cleveland Browns fan base is one of the more passionate in all of football, but also with the recollection that you just don't do that, and that he was, pretty highly disappointed in the fact that that's how they're going to treat one of their players on their team, regardless of the circumstances. And I listen, I want to be clear. Like, I think I understand where the fan base is coming from to an extent, because there's a lot of frustrations with Deshaun Watson. He's a controversial player for a number of reasons, as we know, and he hasn't played well this season. And he had high expectations when he came here with being the player that came over in a trade that saw the Browns send 3 first-round draft picks away, and then saw him get paid $203 million in a contract extension. So I understand that that's there. I want to make it clear, though, as the players did after the game, that cheering for anybody to get injured is not something, or when they get injured is not something that anybody should be doing, no matter how frustrated you are with the quarterback situation. And I thought that was disappointing, as the players kind of obviously alluded to as well. In that same breath, though, like you know, I feel that this situation has reached an impasse, and I honestly, standing here before you today, talking to you guys post game, call it hyperbole, I guess, if you want to, but I don't know if if I had to guess right now, I would say Deshaun Watson's played his last down, his last snap, his last game in a Cleveland Browns uniform. I feel that I truly feel that way. I don't know how mentally he comes back from this on multiple fronts. The fact that he has another serious knee injury that's going to end, or not knee injury, but another serious injury that's going to end his season. And just what does that do to his psyche after he missed most of last year with an injury? Um, you throw that into the mix. The fact that he's going to be another year plus removed from the last time he played good football, and he might say that he doesn't hear the outside noise. The outside noise was pretty much was very much inside the team today, because they all heard the outside noise in real time and reacted to it after the game. Like, I don't know how he comes back out here, puts this uniform on, and somehow takes pride in playing for this organization again, even if he wants to say, "Hey, it's about my teammates and I don't care and what they say and I'm doing it for them," or whatever. I don't know how that could possibly play itself out from here. I just don't. It feels at this point, given what the fan reaction was, it feels like a completely untenable situation. And because of that, I just have to guess that this was probably the last time you see Deshaun Watson in a Cleveland Browns uniform. Maybe I'm wrong. Again, maybe I'm being hyperbolic, but you think about sort of where this was already heading, and I understand, like, this today before the injury, he was playing a pretty decent game. He was 12 of 15, excuse me. He had 128 yards. He was in the midst of leading a touchdown drive that Dorian Thompson-Robinson came in and finished off, and it ended with a Nick Chubb touchdown run, which is what I thought we would be talking about today, was Nick Chubb's return. We will get to that here in a second. Um, but like, I don't see how they can sort of keep trotting him out there. And despite what I was trying to say was, despite the fact that he played well, or somewhat well to that point, I like there was already the clamoring for him to be benched coming into this game and the weeks prior, and that wasn't going to go away this season. And now on top of it, you throw in the fact that it seems like not only has the fan base started to turn on him as like just the being the quarterback of this team, but they're now cheering for him when he gets injured. Like, it's a situation that just seems far beyond repair. And so, I just, again, sort of connecting the dots and all this, I'd be shocked if you see him out here in a Cleveland Browns uniform again. That's just me, and I don't know what that looks like. Again, I talk about there being a lot of different branches off of this. It could mean that the Browns draft a quarterback, and then Deshaun Watson's just kind of here on the roster, maybe not showing up at the facility, just getting paid because, obviously, kind of like he did the last year in Houston, where he was on the team, they were wasting a roster spot on him, but he wasn't actually part of the team. He wasn't really participating in anything. He wasn't at game days or any of that stuff before he got traded. Maybe that's the situation that plays out. You draft a rookie quarterback and you kind of roll with them as this new hope for the franchise. And Deshaun's just kind of here getting paid, collecting a check because you can't move the contract. I don't know. Maybe it is that he's back and he's the backup for somebody, and so maybe you would see him in the uniform again, and that's where I'm wrong. I don't know. I don't know what it looks like, but I can tell you that based off of today and how that played out and the reaction from the fans, it just feels far beyond this thing ever working out. And in some ways, I don't want to say it's like I want to be clear here, because I'm not saying it's like a blessing, but I do think it gives the Browns an easy out from at some point having to publicly say we're benching Deshaun, or in a game saying we're going to bench Deshaun because he wasn't playing well. This now becomes the path of, well, hey, he got hurt again. Injuries are now plaguing his career. We don't know if he's going to be the same guy. So it's time for us to start thinking about the future without him. and what does that look like, and do we want to draft a rookie, whatever that may be. Like this kind of gives them a card to play in that way where they can just say, well, instead of admitting that we got it wrong, we were kind of the decision was made for us. We got it wrong, and we got to keep kind of moving forward because the injuries are just too much at this point, and we don't know if he's ever going to get back to being that player again. So again, in that respect, I think it's kind of an easy out for the Browns to, in some way, shape, or form, move off of Watson in whatever iteration that looks like. But I think that started. I think the turning point and all that, and I think that started truly with him getting hurt behind me here, about 30 yards from me, and seeing his season basically go up in flames once again. Is he'll likely have his third year in Cleveland will be like the first two, where he doesn't play an entire campaign with the team. And there's a lot more questions than answers at this point at that position. Now, what it looks like the rest of the year remains to be seen. I also think like Deshaun's injury likely, and on top of it being another loss today, is likely going to trigger the fire sale that people were hinting at once Amari Cooper got traded this week. So you could see other players on the move here in a couple weeks. The trade deadline 3-ish weeks away, November 5th, I guess 2 weeks away, November 5th, a little over 2 weeks. So I think there's more there's more guys on the table that could get traded. There's a number of different things in terms of what it means for this season, but what it means long term, like I said, I think is this team starting to pivot away from Deshaun as the franchise quarterback and find whatever exit strategy, whatever alternate route they can to get a different quarterback in here to be the team's QB moving forward. We'll see how that all plays out, but I think that's the direction that they're headed. The I guess positive thing from today, or the what was supposed to sort of be even in a loss, I think it would have been a celebratory moment for the day, was Nick Chubb's return to the field. I'm standing. You guys can't see it, but where the camera is, I'm standing right inside, right out front of the tunnel that Nick Chubb ran out of pregame when they announced his name as the last guy in the offense. And it was a moment. It was a really cool moment. Obviously, the fans have been waiting a long time for it. They cheered for him, celebrated him. He showed appreciation for them earlier in the week with the letter that he put out to the fans and just what it meant to him to have their support throughout his recovery from the knee injury. They showed it back today with that sort of welcome that he got to the field. But then, on top of that, he was able to score his first touchdown of the season, first time in a long time. You got a chance to see Nick Chubb in the end zone, and he pulled that off. The first scoring drive for the Browns, which came at the end of that drive that Deshaun actually got hurt on. He punched it in from 1 yard out. He actually scored a couple plays earlier. Penalty pushed it back, and then he scored again, which made it sort of a fun moment for fans to redo their celebration if they didn't get a chance to. And it was clear and evident that he was very much appreciated by this fan base today. And rightfully so. Nick Chubb represents the best of the city, the best of this team, the best of this fan base. And, alternative to the Deshaun Watson situation and how he was treated, it was nice to at least see the respect and the adoration that the Browns faithful has for that player, because we know Deshaun is special. We know that Nick Chubb is special. And we know that this fan base absolutely adores him. I talked about the trade deadline. I'll tell you guys right now, there are two players who I absolutely am not touching when it comes to the trade deadline. And one of them is Nick Chubb, because I understand he's in the last year of his deal. But a 1-6 team with not a lot to play for, tons of questions and just ominous signs at the quarterback position in terms of where they go from here. They need some feel-good stories, and Nick Chubb is absolutely one of the biggest and best feel-good stories that the franchise could have, certainly that this franchise could have. And so to have him be part of this team and continue to work his way back, he was on a snap count today. I want to say he played about like 20-ish snaps in the first half and had most of his carries in the first half. He ended up finishing, I believe it was 11 carries for 22 yards and the touchdown, obviously. And I think he had 10 of those in the first half and just one in the second half. They were certainly sort of limiting his snaps and usage in the second half of play, which is understandable for a guy coming back from the knee injury that he had, where he tore basically all the ligaments, or he did tear all the ligaments in his left knee. So still working his way back. But to continue to follow his story and see his return and how, the uptick in usage and more touchdown runs coming his way. I think this fan base needs that. I think this team needs that as some good PR. And the other guy I'm not touching when it comes to the trade deadline is Myles Garrett. Guys, like, I understand that it was floated out there this week after Amari Cooper got traded. You get some people reacting saying, well, blow it up, just start all over. We did that. This franchise did that. Like, y'all suffered through 1-31 in 2016 and 2017 to get to a point where you never had to go back to that because they ripped it down to the studs and rebuilt it through the draft. And that took years to finally realize the end goal of making the playoffs in 2020, making the playoffs last year, winning that game in 2020 in Pittsburgh, and advancing on, and then giving the Chiefs a run that year that they went on to win the Super Bowl. Like, you did that once. In the NFL, it's funny. Like, teams go from worst to first all the time. There's no need to like make this a panicky thing where you just strip it all down and start all over because they made a bad decision at the quarterback position. I get that could be that's played itself out to this point. We all kind of realize and see, as I laid out earlier, that the writing's basically on the wall for Deshaun Watson, and this might mark the end of his tenure here, or at least playing here. But like, just because of that decision, you don't just start all over again and get rid of players like Myles Garrett. Like, you can turn this thing around quickly if you draft correctly, if you maybe find a franchise quarterback through the draft and actually develop them. If you land the right players at receiver or other positions, like other key spots, if you sign the right free agents, this offensive line looks like it's going to probably need some overhauling in the offseason. I want Myles Garrett here as a part of that, a cornerstone player that you can build around. I don't want to see him shipped somewhere else just because somebody might have a need for a defensive end or a pass rusher, and you think you can find one in next year's draft. Like, that's never a guarantee. Myles Garrett is as sure as it gets. So those are probably the two guys I'm absolutely not touching. I probably would add Joe Bitonio to that list because, again, along the lines of feel-good stories, he could end up retiring at the end of the season. And if that happens, I don't want to necessarily see him don any other colors, and I'm sure you guys agree with that as well. Many of you might think, though, you just get the value and you move on because it's a business thing, and I get that. But I think those are the three guys for me that I wouldn't touch the rest of the way. But that certainly is, it's all on the table, and I think Myles actually laid that out pretty eloquently in his Friday press conference, saying, if we're not playing well, anybody can get traded. It can be me, it can be anybody. Nobody's safe. So they recognize that, they know that it's a business at the end of the day. But with that trade deadline looming, like, tough decisions are coming in the way of trades and other things for this team. Tough decision coming at the quarterback position and what they do there. My best guess would be if the Browns are serious about, like, if they were serious about trying to see this thing through with Deshaun till the end of the season, they weren't going to bench him. I think you got to see what you have in Dorian Thompson-Robinson to know where you're at quarterback going into the offseason once that eventually arrives. So yeah, like, I can't sit there and Jameis is fine, but with the season basically wrapped up at this point in terms of what you're going to be able to achieve, I don't know that it behooves the Browns to play Jameis Winston and try to dig themselves out of an impossible hole at this point. I think you start DTR and see what you have and kind of move forward from there. But that'll be another decision that they have to make on top of the trade decisions and on top of an overarching decision that is going to play itself out, not just in the weeks ahead, in the months ahead, heck, even in the year ahead, in regards to Deshaun Watson and what the future looks like with him. But I maintain what I said earlier in this episode, guys. I think today was probably the last time you see Deshaun Watson in a Cleveland Browns uniform, or at least playing in a game for the Cleveland Browns, because I just don't know how you come back from what we saw play out today. Injury from both from an injury standpoint, but also just where the fan base is at with the player and the optics of it all. I think it's too far gone at this point. Guys, I appreciate you joining me for this post-game conversation and episode. I might be getting hit by a sprinkler here, so I'm going to have to get out of here. But we'll be back, obviously, with our regular Tuesday episode with Eric. Sorry, I'm like walking and talking. With Eric Metcalf as we recap this game with him. And we'll obviously have more content coming for you guys as part of the Believe Network of podcasts, also airing weekly on Bally Sports across the great state of Ohio. And I do want to thank our friends, as always, at Bet Online for their continued support of the Believe Network and all of our shows across the NFL, including the Dawg Check, You can find lines for each and every single game, each and every single week across the NFL, spreads, money lines, over-unders, all of it. And when the games conclude, you can stop. You can jump back in and play their slot machines, blackjack, poker, whatever it might be. You know where to go. Bet online. The game starts here. Thank you guys as always. We'll be back with more episodes of the Dawg Check. 1-6 Browns team and lots of controversy at quarterback, but we maintain faith in the team as always. And so I wrap up with as hearty as I can. Go Browns.